for joining us on Savvy Senior Sources, Talking with Experts. Let's take a moment and hear from our sponsors, GWG Life and Reverse Mortgages SIDAC.
What is the secondary market for life insurance? The secondary market for life insurance is an emerging financial market that provides individuals options with their policies. These options allow policyholders to benefit from the value of their life insurance. Policies are sometimes a financial burden, especially for seniors, as premiums often increase over time. The secondary market offers financial alternatives that can help policyholders benefit from their life insurance now.
Hi, I'm Beth Paterson, a certified reverse mortgage professional with Reverse Mortgages SIDAC. Bob's wife passed away, meaning his Social Security income was cut in half. His financial advisor suggested he look into a reverse mortgage. With the reverse mortgage, he was able to take a dream vacation with his nephew, and oh, the stories that they can share. After Bob passed away, his niece shared the difference that it made to the whole family. Dorothy did the reverse mortgage in order to protect her other retirement funds. With her line of credit, she was able to travel, buy a new car, and do home repairs. Years later, she's still benefiting from the reverse mortgage line of credit and not having to rely on her children. For more information on how you too can have security, independence, dignity, and control, contact us. Hi, welcome to Savvy Senior Sources, Talking with Experts. Savvy Senior Sources guide your way through resources A to V for seniors, caregivers, their families, and their advisors. Through these shows, we're going to be introducing you to the experts. In addition to the TV show, we publish a resource guide, the Savvy Senior Sources Guide. Please visit our website, savvyseniorsources.com, to receive more information on the guide and contact information for our resources. I'd like to take a moment and thank our sponsors who are making this show possible, GWG Life and Reverse Mortgages SIDAC. Now I'd like to say thank you to my guest co-host, Marci Holley with Minneapolis Public Housing. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Beth. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, thanks. And today's show, we're going to be talking about exploring home care and questions you should be asking. Our guest is Sara Laube with Living Life Home Care. Thanks for being here and welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Great. Over 90% of people want to stay in their home, and home care is an option to help them stay in their homes. The home care services are from companion care all the way to skilled care, and the minimum hours, some companies don't have any, most have an hour or two, all the way up to 24-hour care. Let's take a moment and talk about Living Life Home Care.
Yes, well, the agency I work for, I'm a social worker with Living Life Home Care. We're a family-owned agency and we serve the Twin Cities metro area. Our agency provides comprehensive home care, which means we provide hands-on home care to seniors. Typically, we help people with things like bathing, using the bathroom, transferring in and out of bed, and all types of personal care. Our agency offers help from everything from 1 hour a week up to 24-hour care. And in today's show, I'll be talking about the whole spectrum of home care, of all different levels of home care and all different home care options.
Great, thanks. And so one of the questions, if somebody is exploring home care, is to ask, do you have someone who can talk to me in person about your services? Expand on that.
Yes, a lot of clients feel more comfortable getting to know a little bit more about an agency before signing on the dotted line, so to speak. Most agencies have a social worker, they have a nurse, a client advocate, or some sort of representative or liaison that will come in, talk to seniors or their families in person. Oftentimes there's a child making the decision or someone other than the client themselves, and we like to make sure that clients are involved with making that decision of who they choose. And so almost all established agencies will send someone to meet with the senior or their family in person, whether that's at their home, the hospital, rehab center, or wherever they are at that moment trying to make the decision about care. Oftentimes it's hard to make that decision over the phone and get a feel. So I always encourage everyone to meet face-to-face with a representative from the agency.
I think face-to-face can make a big difference, and you get a feel for who they're going to be working with and if they're comfortable with that. And something else and I'm not sure this is one of the other questions, but choices in home care. So if you're meeting with somebody that may be your care provider, and I know the agencies try and match those up with interest or that type of thing, but if somebody's not real comfortable with that care provider that the agency may think, they have choices to find another one, right?
Absolutely. Yep, it should be a choice. It's in the patient's bill of rights that all clients do have a choice as to who comes to their home. And if for any reason they're not comfortable with the representative or the caregiver or the nurse or the person that's been sent from the agency, agencies should be respecting that choice to have another alternative caregiver provided.
Kind of like an interview that they getting comfortable with them.
Yep, and many agencies do offer an interview with initially that representative or nurse or social worker, but also with the specific caregiver that will be providing the day-to-day care.
Great, because that to me is real important to be able to get that personality match or types of things. So another question that should be asked, what types of care and services do you offer? So talk about the different types of services.
As you mentioned, there's quite a range of home care in Minnesota and all states, but I'll talk a little bit about Minnesota specifically. There's essentially 3 levels of licensure or registration in Minnesota. The first being a home care registration, and they're able to provide a lot of companionship care, help around the house, and quite a bit of help, but not the hands-on care. The next level would be basic home care, and they're able to help with quite a lot of personal care, but not the more complex needs. And then comprehensive licensure encompasses skilled care, which is typically short-term rehab type care, and hands-on personal care that's a little bit more complex. Things like helping with a Hoyer mechanical lift and some of those more complex things like a feeding tube. So really there's a whole range, and sometimes the terms can be a little bit tricky. So it's important to let the home care agency know that the types of care that will be needed, whether it's more of the hands-on type care, the personal care, or the hands-off, like help around the house. There's many different agencies, a few hundred in the metro area alone, and a few more hundred throughout the state of Minnesota. So that's actually one of the most important starting questions before you schedule that face-to-face interview, to make sure that the agency can meet your needs, both with the skill level and the geographical location, because some agencies serve different areas.
Okay, great. And you mentioned about a few hundred. At one point I heard there were thousands of home care agencies in Minnesota, which can be real overwhelming to people. And how do you know? And a lot of times people go online and do the searching, and Savvy Senior Sources, I just want to say, we select the care providers and we limit the number of agencies that are listed in the guidebook, so that can help people screen who they want to be working with. Another question that should be asked is, what's the background of the agency? So expand on what they should be looking for with that.
Yeah, I think it's important for seniors and their families to find out a little bit about why the agency exists. What's the story? Why did the agency come about? And who are the people working there in terms of the management team, the owner, things like that? Because there really are a lot of different backgrounds of why people started their home care agencies, whether it's affiliated with either a national franchise or a hospital, or whether it's a standalone local agency. There's so many different options, and that's a big part of getting to know about the agency and what type of service they have.
Okay, great. And excuse me. Another question they should be asking is how the caregivers are screened and recruited.
In Minnesota, there is a requirement to be doing a Minnesota background check. All agencies should be following through on that, but it's always best practices just to ask to make sure that the agencies are following that. And in addition, many agencies are doing more thorough screenings, things such as drug testing, national background checks, driver's license checks, so that they're really getting a bigger picture rather than just that criminal background check. There's a lot of other things that people want to know about, and so to find out how the agency is going above and beyond that minimum requirement, because agencies do vary quite a bit with how they're screening their caregivers. Are they doing reference checks, and if so, how many? Are they doing personal references or job verifications? So.
And training, and you mentioned about checking driver's license. I would think that would be really important, especially if they're going to be driving the client or their companion to a doctor's appointment, or even out to the movie theater or something like that.
Exactly.
So you better make sure that caregiver has a good record. And
yes. And then as far as training, the training that one would expect from an agency really depends on what type of care they're looking for. So that varies a bit, but it's still a good question to ask, because an agency could, in theory, have a background check and put someone to work the next day. Other agencies are training just on their agency protocol. Other agencies are looking for certified nursing assistants, and really everything in between. So it's important to find out what that agency is looking for when they're hiring and training.
Okay.
I recently just went through this with my mother, looking for home health care agencies and a lot of them are so different. Are your employees independent contractors, or are they employees?
Our employees are actually employees of our agency. Most of the agencies in the Twin Cities metro area are using actual employees. The benefit to that is that everything is covered in terms of insurance, liability. If there was ever an accident or something, it wouldn't fall onto the client's homeowner's insurance. If using an independent contractor, if there is some sort of an accident in the home, the caregiver could sue to cover their expenses. They can file for unemployment if there's ever a loss of hours, things like that. And so using an agency that uses employees means that the agency is covering their taxes, covering their workers' comp, covering their unemployment, and carrying the burden of those extra type of things. So usually it's recommended that an agency is using employees instead of independent contractors. It's a good question to ask, though, to make sure that the agency is doing that.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah, it is. And with the independent contractors, if that caregiver gets sick, they may not have somebody to come in. I had a client several years ago, and she was using an independent contractor for the caregiver, and that's exactly what happened. She got sick, and the woman was paralyzed, and she needed help to get out of bed. And then the caregiver couldn't show up the day. So that's something to always keep in mind on, what services and how are they supported and backed up, where an agency could get another caregiver in right away.
Another thing with that was hard to navigate is payment. How do you get paid?
I think that's an important thing to ask each agency. There's many different forms, many different options. Medicare pays for short-term skilled care after a change in status, an illness, injury, things like that. People sometimes qualify for occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, many different skilled services in the home. Most services are either covered by Medicaid, private pay, long-term care insurance, Veterans Administration benefits, and I'll let Beth talk a little bit more about some other options.
Yeah, a couple other options to pay for home care, especially if it's private pay, is from our sponsors, GWG Life, which is converting life insurance policies into cash, or a reverse mortgage. They can use the equity in the home to pay for services, and those, especially the reverse mortgage, can also be tied in with them if somebody is on medical assistance or Medicaid. They can receive both. And so there's a lot of options that can expand the time that one can stay in their home and receive the money.
Because I think the biggest myth with home care is that Medicare will pay for either home care or a nursing home. And unfortunately, for long-term custodial care, kind of those day-to-day care needs when someone's stable, unfortunately, Medicare does not pay for that type of care either at home or in the nursing home if someone has some private funds.
Yeah, I think that's a big shock to families when they're going through things like this with their loved ones.
Yeah, definitely.
And oftentimes a little bit of home care can be one of the most affordable options. Depending on someone's care needs, a few hours a day of home care can meet a lot of people's needs.
Okay, I'm thinking of a client that we had done a reverse mortgage for, and she fell and broke her shoulder and needed some additional services. So she called Living Life Home Care to provide that until she was better. And so just something like that. Another question to ask is, how do you assure continuity of care?
Yeah, and for most of our clients and their families, they want as few people involved as possible. They want the care customized to their loved one. They want to have as few people in their home as possible. And so for continuity of care, I think that's kind of the buzzword that everyone's looking for, but I would ask the agency, how do they do that? What do they do to retain their caregivers? What are they doing to minimize the amount of hours? Are they giving a reward system for people for continuity? Are they, how are they staffing to make sure that the same caregivers are going in over and over again? And so different agencies have very different systems for doing that, but I would go further than just hearing them say, we value continuity of care. I would ask for, what are their systems? What's their process for making sure that that's carried out on a day-to-day basis?
Okay, in essence of time, we're just going to go through some more questions. And so if you want to go talk about a couple more but not expand on the answers. So one of them is, tell me, something else to ask is, tell me about what makes your agency unique.
Yep. In a nutshell, just finding out, do they have any specialty programs or anything that you should know about the agency?
Okay. And go through a couple more questions for us.
Sure. How do they assess the need for care? Different agencies handle differently as far as who determines the amount of hours. Is there a nurse or a care coordinator that determines the amount of hours, or does the client choose the amount of hours? And finding out their process for that.
Okay, and I just got the signal that we're running out of time. So one other thing is, the last question that I'm going to touch on is, what were the results questions that somebody should ask? What were the results of the most recent state health department survey? And they can get those results from
the Minnesota Department of Health website has state survey results from home cares. And that can be, you can search for that by agency name, county, many different ways that you can find out that information.
Okay, and just to wrap up, if somebody would like a list of these questions, they can reach out to you, and we have your contact information on the bottom of the screen. And so call Living Life Home Care to get that information. And thanks for being here as our guest today and going through and helping us understand home care a little better. I'd also like to thank my co-host, Marci Holley, again from Minneapolis Public Housing. And don't forget to go to SavvySeniorSources.com for resources and information about our guest. And I'd like to just say a last thank you to our sponsors, GWG Life and Reverse Mortgages SIDAC. And let's take a moment to hear again from them. Thank you.
Provide for your long-term care. Convert your life insurance towards payments for long-term care. If you are concerned about future health care, you can convert your life insurance to pay for home care or assisted living. Health problems can be stressful enough without the added burden of financial obligations. If you feel that you no longer need your life insurance policy, you may want to apply the value towards long-term care.
Hi, I'm Beth Paterson, a certified reverse mortgage professional with Reverse Mortgages SIDAC. Mike and Carol decided that they needed a one-level home to fit their changing health needs. They used the reverse mortgage to purchase their new home instead of using conventional financing. This has benefited them greatly. Barbara decided to do a reverse mortgage to pay off her conventional loan, that she was making monthly payments on. She had funds left in the line of credit after paying that off. And a year or so later, when she fell and broke her shoulder, she was able to tap those lines of credit to pay for her home care. As she said, she would have been up the creek without a paddle without the reverse mortgage. If you'd like information on how to receive security, independence, dignity, and control in your retirement years, contact us.